Good morning, everybody. I'm going to drop some brand protection tips. I'm LaTonya Moore. I'll just tell you if you see me look into, I guess, my left, I am actually looking at another screen over here just so we can make sure that we get all this information to you today. So y'all may want to share this video to your friends that's married, getting married, you got kids, you got a business, because we're going to talk about some good stuff this morning. So just real quick, I am wanting to talk today about prenuptial agreements. I know everybody wants to say that's a bad thing, but I'm telling you, they really are not. And I'm going to share some of those reasons why they're not bad and why they get a bad rap, but quite frankly, why they are really good things to consider and think about, especially if you are on a subsequent marriage. If you are in a situation where maybe you got married later, in the sense of after you started to acquire certain things, if you got married and you already have children from a previous relationship and you have some things that you want to leave those children, there are lots of reasons why getting a prenuptial agreement is not a bad thing. And I wanted to talk with you guys about that today because I want you to understand that this is really about truly protecting assets and making sure that where you want your things to go is where they go. And it's very simple. I know I said I don't even know if I'm gonna look at comments live because I know that the first thing that people are gonna see is a prenup. Why would I want to get a prenuptial agreement? Some people believe that if you have a prenuptial agreement, that means that you think that the marriage is not going to last or you're jinxing the marriage. But people have that same idea. I've heard people say that very same thing about life insurance, which I think is preposterous. One of the reasons why a prenuptial agreement is not a bad thing, because let's be honest, life happens. We don't know what is going to happen. And so when you sit down and talk about that early, and you already sort of make some plans for, well, if for some reason this happens to us, this is what we are going to put in place. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having that discussion. And I think you need to have that discussion sooner rather than later. Okay. And so I know I'm going to get some pushback. I know it's fine. It's fine for you to push back. I just got an inbox. But anyway, so I want to just talk about the reasons that a prenuptial is not bad. For those of you that have businesses that you're building, you have built them, and so now you're looking at bringing on a spouse. You got to think about how is that going to affect, especially if you're in a partnership, number one. Number two, if your vision is to leave this business to your children, for example, you may have some children that were from a previous relationship or outside of this particular relationship. You want to have some things in place for those children. Nothing wrong with that. But I'm telling you right now, unless you have some type of prenuptial agreement, or better yet, you need to be in my class, 7 Ways to Protect Assets and Avoid Probate. You guys may have seen that because it's sold out. It's a free masterclass that I am doing on the 14th. If you don't know about it, but you want to get on the wait list, you need to make sure that you drop your name, city, and state, email. Send me a DM with that information. I'll put you on the wait list. But just real quickly, I want to go through a couple of reasons why a prenuptial agreement is not a bad idea. You have more money and assets than your soon-to-be spouse, right? Nothing wrong with a level up, right? Nothing wrong with the fact that some people earn more, or not even just earning. Some people are just better with money. They invest and things of that nature. For example, I know people that are not married, but they have real estate. They have stock. They have a business. They have other investments that they've invested in. Some people invest in gold. So you have a lot of other things that you have invested in that you've done this prior to the marriage. So you may have a few more assets or even more money than the person that you're marrying. you need to think about, okay, if this marriage does not last, right, to death do us part, what do I want to happen with that? You really have to think about that. You got to have that conversation. You got to have that conversation with your pending spouse. Both of you have to have that conversation. You want to know, what do they want if the marriage dissolves, right? Because these are the things that you write down, and you it serves the basis of your agreement. The other thing too, like I mentioned at the top of this video, you may be dealing with a blended family situation. You may have children from a previous relationship. They may have children from a previous relationship. What do you want to happen to your things that are going to that particular child? Don't tell me, oh, I can just do that in a will, because you don't know that. I'm going to be honest. You could just do it in a will, but I'm telling you right now, every state in the union has clauses and laws that allow for spouses to challenge wills, right? So this is why, again, we're really talking about, I don't want to get off track. We're really talking about the prenuptial agreement, because we're talking about if the marriage dissolves, okay? That's the thing that you have to think about, which is why it's very important. I always tell my business owners, you need to have something in place, even if it's just thinking about your business, especially if you have a partnership. I won't want to go into partnership with somebody that has a spouse, and we don't have anything in place saying that if something happens, the spouse is not going to come in and be my business partner, right? The spouse has no interest in any of the assets or the money or the profits or the royalties or anything related to this business. The spouse has none, zero, zilch, nada, right? So I know it may not be popular, but it's the truth. And these are the things you really got to think about when you're getting married, because once you get married, they automatically have interest in certain things, right? The other thing too is you want to avoid the stress. I mean, who wants to be at the end, right? Now it's contentious. Somebody don't want to be with the other person, and now it's like, oh, now we have to divide assets. Okay, think about it. If this person has left you, they've wronged you, wouldn't you kind of want to drag them over the coals, or just, honestly, just be difficult just to make them suffer? That happens sometimes. But if you have a prenuptial agreement, some of these things have already been decided up front, and it was decided during a time where things were all good, right? Or you were all on the same page, okay? So you at least have dealt with probably, the financial part, okay? What about the dog? I mean, you got people now that everything else is taken care of, and now they fighting over the dog. You got to think about that. Like, those things are very important. So you want to take the stress out of it. The other thing too is, let's be realistic. Everybody does not marry just for love and because you're cute. Some people really are marrying because of the assets. And so you want to make sure that you position yourself to protect those assets. You want to make sure that you position yourself where, if this is the situation, you've already determined, you guys have already come to a mutual agreement of what that looks like at the end of the day, at the end of the marriage. Okay. Now, there are some other things, of course, I can't get into everything today, but what I really wanted to just open this conversation up, and I may even do a masterclass on prenuptial agreements and the things that need to go in them and the things that you need to consider. So somebody remind me of that later on, but I definitely want you guys to really think about this. Don't see the prenuptial agreement as something that's bad. You really need to see it as, we need to sit down and talk about the entire life cycle of our marriage, because there are a number of ways that marriages end. One is death. You got to have that conversation. You guys always hear me talk about that. But one is divorce, which is, honestly, it's very, very common now. And so you really want to have those conversations up front of, how do we want to handle this? You really, really want to do that. Like I mentioned earlier, you are a business owner. You have a separate business that doesn't have anything to do with the marriage. You want to make sure that that person cannot come in and now become and get stock in your business, or they can become part owner and things of that nature. You want to make sure that that is not a part of it. And I know I'm harping on that because that's like my big thing. And quite honestly, that's where I get this. That is exactly where I get this, even in my own practice. People are thinking about their business and their partnerships. And so the partners are coming to me, and I'm helping them navigate through this on the partnership side. And so I started telling people, look, you need to also deal with this on your prenuptial agreement side. And then it's deers in the headlight. What do you mean prenuptial agreement? Should I have a prenuptial agreement? That's why I wanted to have this conversation today and talk with you guys about that. It is not a bad thing. It's just saying, look, we're going to make some upfront decisions just in case our marriage comes to an untimely demise. Just like getting insurance, right? You need to know, well, that's a little bit more guaranteed, but you guys get the picture, right? You get the analogy. The other thing too is that prenuptial agreements typically override most state divorce laws, which means, okay, that if the divorce law says something that is counter to your prenuptial agreement, in most states, the prenuptial agreement will actually prevail because you guys have created a contract where you have determined this is how we want things to happen, not like that. So I know I mentioned earlier about the asset protection masterclass that I'm doing. There's a link, bit.ly secrets from the brand protector. That's going to take you right to the masterclass. Check it out so that you can definitely get on the mailing list. I wanted to just drop this off to you guys, and I want to know what you think. For those of you that are watching, what do you think about this? Do you think a prenuptial agreement is a good idea? Would you like to see a masterclass on it, right? Is it something that's important to you? Again, I try to do these videos based on things that come across my office, people that contact me on a regular basis. And once I see something that seems to be a pattern, I want to make sure that I do a video about it to share it. So again, getting a prenuptial agreement is not a bad thing. Thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. I do appreciate it. And don't forget, if you want to get on that wait list, make sure to share your city, your name, your city and state, and your email address. Send it to my DM. I don't want anybody harvesting your email addresses. And just let me know that you want to be on the wait list. So again, thank you guys so much. Have a good day.